All right. I'm Peter Alessandria, and for the next 90 minutes, I invite you to be bigger than you think you are. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Let's take a look at our agenda for this evening. All right, as usual, we're going to start off with some announcements, followed by our recommended reading, the affirmation of the day, introductions and victories. Then we'll listen to an audiobook excerpt from my book, the second edition of Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. We're working through Chapter 7. We'll have to come back, work on our topic discussion, take a break, and then come back, work on the assignment, do some Q&A, and wrap it up by 9 o'clock. A reminder that today's workshop is being recorded and will be available on the BeBiggerToday.com website and YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. Please feel free to stop your video and or mute your microphone if you do not wish to be seen or heard on the recording. Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. First edition, author-signed paperbacks. There's only a couple left. Use the discount code WORKSHOP20 at checkout at BeBiggerToday.com/book to get your copy. While you're there, check out my New York City photo book, New York Cityscapes. It's a collaboration between myself and 6 other New York City area photographers. We each have our own unique take on the New York City skyline and the landmarks that make the Big Apple so great. Check it out at BeBiggerToday.com/bookstore. It's on sale for $16.95. Get yours today. But we do have hats and t-shirts. BeBiggerToday.com merch. Use discount code MERCH20 at checkout at BeBiggerToday.com/merch. You can also see my original art and photography, my landscape, cityscape, and abstract images, professionally framed, gallery-wrapped canvas prints. Check them out at BeBiggerToday.com/art-photography. And here's my commercial for the night. Peter's photos and abstract designs are uniquely beautiful, one-of-a-kind works of art. These gallery-wrapped canvas prints are set in a contemporary shadow box floating frame and will enhance the beauty of any home or office. Available in 4 different sizes, each piece is professionally framed and comes complete and ready to hang. Frames are available in your choice of black, white, or brown, and each is signed by the artist. Peter's original art and photography will make a great gift for a client, for yourself, or someone you love. Order yours today. You can also check out some NYC refrigerator magnets. These are my original photos on refrigerator magnets. Get yours at BeBiggerToday.com/merch. My latest podcast, What's the Difference podcast on the US-UK network. Go to my website, BeBiggerToday.com. Look for this photo on the homepage. Click on it, and it'll take you right to the YouTube video for this podcast. We had a great discussion about overcoming our limiting thoughts and beliefs about ourselves, which is, you know, is the topic of my book. So check that out. And I am available for one-on-one coaching as well as corporate consulting. Packages or subscription plans are available. If you're a creative person, a writer, a photographer, an artist, or if you work for a company or have a company and would like me to come in and speak to your management team, your sales team on how they can be bigger than they think they are, reach out to me through the website and we'll set that up. And finally, I'm accepting donations. I'm looking for support to continue to offer this workshop at no charge and keep it open to everyone. We have a suggested donation of $5 per week or $20 per month. You can send your contribution to me at paypal.me/Peter Alessandria, and thank you so much for your support. All right, so moving on to our recommended reading for tonight. Tonight's recommended reading is Tomorrow's God, Our Greatest Spiritual Challenge. This book is written by Neil Donald Walsh, who is the author of the Conversations with God book series, which I've talked a lot about in the past. I picked this book in particular because I actually use a quote from it tonight in our discussion, as well as in my book. And I really love this book. This kind of flew under the radar. You know, Neil has probably in the Conversations with God series, I think there's now at least 6 or 7, which are all excellent. And then Tomorrow's God, as well as the New Revelations. And then there's a bunch of other ones that he's written over the years. If you are new to kind of the spiritual quest, you're interested in getting a handle on source, on something, on spirit, on something bigger than all of us, how we got here, what we're doing here. His book, especially the Conversations with God series, are highly recommended. It's kind of the primer at this point for me on Spirituality 101 and the relationship between man and God. So I highly recommend all his books. As I said, this book has significance for us tonight in our discussion. And here's the publisher's blurb for you guys. Tomorrow's God contains an astonishing prediction, one that comes from an astonishing source, God. Presented as a conversation between God and the author, this startling, profound book is offered in 2 parts. Part 1 deals with humanity's current conception of God and the new ideas about the deity that will characterize God in our not-too-distant future. Part 2 examines how these ideals will be put into place and how they will impact our lives and help us to create a newer, better tomorrow. Controversial, challenging, and illuminating, Tomorrow's God provides both spiritual and down-to-earth advice on what each of us can do to cope with the current world crises and experience God in such a way that our experience of one another will be healed at last. So check it out, Tomorrow's God, available wherever you get books. You can get the audiobook if you like on Audible and elsewhere, as well as Amazon and wherever you get books. Great book, highly recommended. And as I said, we're going to talk about a quote from this book tonight, a little later. Now, affirmation of the day. So this, again, is not an actual affirmation. This showed up in my inbox this week. As you know, I subscribe to the Abraham Hicks daily email blast. They send an email every morning. And the topic, as always, is the law of attraction. So this affirmation, it's not really an affirmation, but it's something that I want us to think about. It's something that we actually have been talking about on and off over the last few weeks as well. Whatever you're giving your attention to is already vibrating. And when you give it your attention, you include its vibration in your vibration. This means when you give something you want your attention, you're including whatever its vibration is in your vibration. Likewise, when you give something you don't want your attention, you're doing the same thing, i.e., you're including its vibration in your vibration. In this world, you are far more vibrational beings than verbal beings. You're communicating far more on a vibrational basis than you are on a verbal basis. Now, there's a lot of talk about vibrations in there, and if you were around in the 70s, you remember us talking about good vibes, maybe even in the 60s too. Think of vibration as, well, they do say your vibration is your point of attraction. I like to make the connection between what they're calling vibration and our emotional state. So if I'm in an emotionally positive state, I'm vibrationally positive. Whereas if I'm in an emotionally negative state, I'm vibrationally negative. So it's this idea that our emotions communicate more than our actual words do. And not only do they communicate to others our emotions, but they also become a point of attraction. So we attract things that will reinforce our emotional state. So you may have had the experience, I've had the experience where, the day starts out bad and it just gets worse, And what I recognize now is it was my negative emotional state that was attracting more negativity to me throughout the course of the day. And perhaps it was, manifesting on my drive to work. There was traffic. I get to work, I get to the office, and people, somebody took my tuna fish sandwich that I was saving in in the kitchen in the lunchroom for later today. Somebody took that. And then, my boss calls me in his office and he wants me to explain my latest expense report. And it just kind of goes down. And then one of my best clients cuts me off, leaves the company. And so it just spirals. And it's based on our emotional point of attraction, our emotional state. This is why I always say it's so important, and it's our responsibility to choose thoughts, feelings, words, and actions that serve us, with the understanding that it's our thoughts, our mental processes, that create our emotional state. So if I'm thinking negative thoughts, it's going to be very difficult for me to have a positive emotional state. Rather, I'm going to have a negative emotional state. And if I have a negative emotional state, then according to Abraham Hicks and the law of attraction, I'm going to attract more things that resonate with that negative emotional state. It's this idea of resonance. It's this idea that we attract, like attracts like. Birds of a feather flock together. We draw to us whatever our predominant emotional state is. So I'm suggesting that we begin to take responsibility for all of this by consciously and deliberately choosing positive thoughts, which will lead to positive feelings, which will lead to positive words and actions, which will lead to positive outcomes through the law of positive attraction. We will attract to us positive things based on our ground of being, where we're coming from. All right, and the other thing that comes up in this, which I talked about last week or the week before in terms of our discussion of forgiveness, is that we get what we think about whether we want it or not. So if I'm focused on somebody else's negative behavior, if somebody else's negative attitude and all of that, I'm going to elicit more of that. If I'm focused on what's missing from my life, I'm going to encounter more things that seem to be missing from my life. All right, so we want to be conscious of what we're giving our attention to. Now, obviously, if somebody is, and I say this every week, I'm going to say it again, if somebody's acting inappropriately, we want to give that situation enough attention so we can take care of ourselves. All right, we don't have to put ourselves in harm's way or anything like that. But we don't want to spend more time focused on the problem than the solution. We want to take conscious and deliberate control of our mental attention and our focus, because we get what we think about, and what we think about creates what we feel about it. So we get what we think and feel about whether we want it or not. All right, so this comes under the law of attraction, but it fits into what we've been talking about in terms of forgiveness. So in terms of forgiveness, we want to focus on the positive aspects of the people in our lives. We want to focus on the positive aspects of a situation, or the positive aspects of our job, or whatever it is that we're thinking about forgiving. So we're going to take responsibility for our thoughts, which will mean we're taking responsibility for our feelings, which means we'll be taking responsibility for what we attract into our lives. All right, I see some of you guys are chomping at the bit. I know you want to do your introductions and victories. So this is the portion of the workshop where people get to say hello. If you're new here, you can introduce yourself. Or if you would like to share a victory or celebration from the past week, now is your time. Just unmute yourself and take it away.
Thank you. Peter, thank you. And I look forward to the rest of this evening. Looking forward with delight. My celebration this week is 50 years of sobriety, celebrated and acknowledged yesterday. And that is amazing. So I'm very grateful, and grateful for all the people who have participated in my life all these years, and some shorter, some longer. Thank you. You're one of them, Peter, Dee Dee, others here. Thank you.
Well, I only have one thing to say, Cynthia. Woohoo! 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 We'll give you 3 for that one.
Thank you.
That's amazing. 50 years. That's awesome. And is it fair to say that you see yourself differently today than you did 50 years ago?
Oh, yes, very much differently.
All right,
Definitely.
great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. You're an inspiration to us all, so that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dee Dee, you want to say hi?
Yeah, sorry, I get so confused with my two different vehicles to participate. Hi, and congratulations, Cynthia. Happy anniversary. That is incredible. Dee Dee in Washington, I have to show you this view. I don't know how much longer I'm going to have this view, so I just have to, always a victory. When I was listening to you, Peter, I noticed in my heart it's easy to forgive. There's a person that's so much easier to forgive than another person with these kind of situations that I'm dealing with. And I think it's so interesting that I'm having that phenomenon. Like, I want to focus on the positive of the whole situation, and then there's this one egregious. So I'm just going to keep listening and see if there's hope for me to be able to focus on the positive on that other situation, because that's really why I know I need this medicine. Okay. Yes.
All right, great. Thanks, Dee Dee. I totally understand. This is why what we focus on is so important, because we always have a choice. Again, it's not to say that other people are not acting like jerks. Sometimes they do, because I know sometimes I act like a jerk. So I see it's possible that other people act that way. But we still get to, we get to decide what we're going to focus on. And we'll hear tonight that one of the definitions of forgiveness from A Course in Miracles is very simple. It's to overlook or look past somebody else's negative character traits, negative personality traits, negative behavior. Now, I suggest we do that after we take care of ourselves. We want to make sure that we're taken care of, that we're safe. But once we're in a position where we're no longer under threat, if that's actually what was going on, then we have a choice. What are we going to focus on now? We're going to continue to harbor on how could they do that to me, which quite honestly is a place I like to hang out, and take things personally and all of that. Or are we going to overlook and look past the negative aspects of their personality or whatever, and then make a new decision, make a new choice? It ain't easy. Simple, but ain't easy. And the other thing I'll say is ultimately, and honestly, this is a tease at the end of this chapter, because I'm actually going to talk about this in my next book. But what we're going to find out is that all forgiveness is ultimately self-forgiveness. So by forgiving other people, we're actually loving ourselves. We're forgiving ourselves. But I only kind of hinted that at the end of the chapter. We're not going to really talk much about it until when I get the next book done. You want to say something else, Dee Dee? You good? Okay. Anybody else want to say anything? Share a victory, celebration, introduce yourself. All right, so let us move on. So as usual, or continuing, we're talking about, and what I'm calling now is true forgiveness. So you guys may remember in chapter 3, I talked about true power. Chapter 4, I talked about true love. Now we're talking about true forgiveness, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what forgiveness is and how to do it. So we're going to move into that now. We talked the last few weeks about healthy boundaries, taking care of ourselves. It is, in my opinion, it is impossible to practice true forgiveness if we're not taking care of ourselves. In fact, it doesn't make any sense, because we could just be putting ourselves back in harm's way with inappropriate people. And remember, our boundaries protect us, but they also contain us. Because I know there have been instances in my life when I have been the inappropriate one, when I have been inappropriate with other people because I didn't have healthy, functional boundaries. So boundaries come first, taking care of ourselves, and then we can do what I'm calling the work of true forgiveness here. All right, so we're going to listen to the audiobook excerpt tonight from chapter 7. I think it's about 10 minutes. So we'll listen to that now, and then when we come back, we'll do our discussion. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Speaking of God, in this well-known quote from the Bible, Jesus is asking his Father in heaven to forgive his persecutors. Hanging from a cross, presumably in great pain and suffering, he is beseeching God to show these people mercy. The implication is they're innocent because they lack awareness of the nature of their actions. I personally believe this is the ultimate message of Jesus' life. We're all innocent because we know not what we do. Something unexpected or frightening occurs and we feel overwhelmed. We react without thinking or do something harmful to ourselves or another. In those moments, it can be said we have no idea what we're doing. Forgiving those who are unmindful is merciful. Withholding forgiveness because they should have known better is a lost opportunity to love others when they probably least like themselves. Some will say a mistake is one thing, deliberately trying to hurt another person is something else. I'll say again, we're not condoning violence or making excuses for harmful behavior. Yet I believe in our normal, healthy state as human beings, it's not in our nature to knowingly want to harm another person. In 12-step programs, they say, hurt people, hurt people. The clear implication is we only harm others when we ourselves are hurting. We spoke in the first 2 chapters about the effects our childhood experiences can have on us later in life. Even a normal childhood can create reactive personalities. Add physical or emotional abuse or being raised in an environment dominated by addiction, mental illness, or religious indoctrination, and even seemingly normal, well-intentioned people can do crazy things to themselves and others. This is all my way of saying that when we knowingly hurt or injure anyone, we're usually not in our right mind. Again, this doesn't mean we let people walk away scot-free. There are still consequences for their actions. But approaching it from this place has the potential to inject a greater measure of compassion and understanding into how we respond to them. Like most everything else we've covered so far, the extent to which we can forgive another is determined largely by who we think we are in relation to them. As long as we see ourselves as vulnerable, threatened, or in danger, it will be very tough to forgive. In fact, if that's who we really are in that situation, it probably wouldn't make any sense to forgive. We'd only be setting ourselves up for more potential harm from that person. I'm trying to suggest that those who would do us harm are not necessarily bad or evil. They may be living with the effects of a difficult or even traumatic upbringing. They may be suffering with an undiagnosed mental or emotional condition. They may be relatively normal and of sound mind, yet something extraordinary has happened in the moment which leaves them in a reactive state. Or they may just be having a bad day. Think about the last time you were aggravated by something at work and became unduly aggressive on the drive home. In this regard, I'm reminded of what Greek philosopher Plato had to say. Be kind, for everyone is fighting the same hard battle. Most of us do experience life as a battle, and a losing one at that. We're often so stressed that it's easy to do things which may negatively impact ourselves and others. This is as true of anger between family members as it is of aggression between nations. The point is, seeing another person as struggling or frightened or confused, and then in some measure giving them the benefit of the doubt, opens the door to the peaceful resolution of our differences. In his book, Tomorrow's God, a part of the Conversations with God book series, Neale Donald Walsch suggests asking this question of another person when they've harmed us. What hurts you so much that you feel you have to hurt me to heal it? For me, this is a wonderfully powerful question. We're not reacting defensively or dropping down to their level by retaliating. Rather, we're inquiring if something negative, perhaps even truly devastating, has taken place in their life which is causing them to act this way. This makes it a compassionate rather than attacking response, which has the potential to awaken them to the fact that what they're doing is inappropriate. Instead of giving our power away, we maintain our composure and respond with empathy and understanding. That's true strength in my book. Once again, pun intended. In my own life, I've thought of something similar. With regard to the people who would do us harm, if we saw the world the way they see the world, and if we saw ourselves the way they see themselves, then we'd probably be doing the exact same thing they're doing, and that makes us the same as them. This acknowledges that all people behave in accordance with their own subjective perception of both themselves and the world around them. We said earlier that self-preservation and the pursuit of happiness are the common motivations we all share. In this regard, while we may be insane, we're not crazy. Each of us is doing exactly what makes sense to us in order to survive and/or to be happy in life. Again, this doesn't mean we have to condone someone else's harmful behavior. We can respond as necessary to defend ourselves. Yet looking at the other person's or nation's actions as their attempt to get what they think they need from life changes the equation. Rather than taking those actions personally, we can have empathy. We can relate to their craziness as opposed to shaking our heads in disbelief that they could do such a thing to us. And a moment of compassion may be all that's needed to completely diffuse an otherwise volatile situation. A call for love. A Course in Miracles says all attacks are a call for love. A moment ago, we said when one person attacks another, chances are pretty good that the first person is not in their right mind. Sane, healthy people don't attack others. They find peaceful ways to resolve their differences. Think about a time in your own life when you felt really good, safe, secure, loved, etc. Were you compelled to judge or badmouth other people? Were you consumed with resentment or thoughts of getting even? Did you want to harm anyone for any reason? What if we could shift our thinking to say that when one person attacks another, that first person is really calling out for help? What if we could see their lashing out as being driven by fear and maybe even as an act of desperation? Would that change how we viewed them? In Chapter 4, we said it's easy to love people when they're doing what we want them to do. The truer measure, however, is how we treat them when we hate what they're doing or being. Parents often face this dilemma: how to love a child when they can't stand who the child is being. If the parent is able to shift how they see themselves in relation to the child, this will make them less likely to lash out. This in turn will open the door for compassionate communication between the parent and child, rather than either or both lashing out in blame and anger. In terms of how we relate to others, most of us are nice enough individuals, compassionate and deeply caring at times. But eventually we draw a line. There are certain people who just don't deserve our love. We all have our reasons, and there are probably many who would agree that our reasons are sound. Yet what if we could change how we see the people we hate? What if we could recognize an unhealed part of ourselves in those who would attack and do us harm? Punishment, retaliation, and attack are decisions to withhold love and/or inflict injury upon another. We think by doing these things we'll be protecting ourselves. Yet what few people realize is that we're actually creating more things to be afraid of by attacking others. Every time we retaliate, justified or not, we create, both in our minds and in reality, the potential for more enemies. More enemies creates more fear, and the cycle continues. Forgiveness, on the other hand, breaks the cycle. The decision to overlook what someone else did and extend compassion rather than retaliation creates allies, not adversaries. Forgiveness is thus an expression of love that eliminates potential enemies and ultimately undoes fear. The problem is we usually feel justified in hurting those who we think have harmed us. We're so certain we're right about them being wrong, we never question the basis for our actions. I mentioned earlier I have 8 nieces and nephews. They currently range in age from 6 to 15. Almost every time there's a conflict between them, and there are often many, when an adult intervenes, one or both of the kids protests that the other one started it. What they're saying is, I'm justified in acting this way because of what the other person did to me. To immature minds, this makes perfect sense. Yet I sometimes wonder how far we've progressed when, even as adults, we use someone else's unloving behavior to justify our own. As an exercise in not seeing ourselves and other people differently, the next time you're ready to attack someone for what you think they did to you, stop and ask, would I accuse myself of doing this? If you were in their shoes, would you have acted the same way? This simple question can open the door to peace. Again, we have to remember everyone feels justified in what they do. So if we all feel justified, i.e. think we're correct in doing what we do, how can we know who's right and who's wrong? A better strategy might be to inquire of the other person why they acted the way they did. A genuine inquiry made with an open heart and mind could lead to a breakthrough and heal the rift between you. Accusation and attack, on the other hand, will only widen that rift. At this point, or maybe many, many pages ago, you might be thinking that I'm off in fantasy land, that I'm out to lunch when it comes to how the world works. I'll acknowledge that much of what I'm suggesting is new, or at least out of step with the current view on things. But I would also suggest that the status quo is not working.
We haven't solved the problems of conflicts with our own neighbors. Hey, I swear it was only a few pieces of junk mail. Much less our conflicts with other nations. Business as usual is not sustainable. Ultimately, what I'm suggesting may not be the total answer, but I do feel we have to move in a new direction if we want a better future. We must move towards seeing similarities rather than differences. Peace begins not with government policies or race relations. Peace begins with you and me in our own hearts and minds. Seeing ourselves differently and then seeing all others differently, so we actually see us and them as the same, is the way home.
All right, so there is the reading for tonight. And so we're going to launch into our discussion. So one of the things I mentioned in the book tonight, some things that may be helpful when we're in the moment. Hurt people. This is a saying that you hear a lot in 12-step programs. All attacks are a call for love. That's from A Course in Miracles. I also like this one. Supposedly Greek philosopher Plato said, "Be kind, for everyone is fighting the same hard battle." And as I said in the audiobook tonight, most of us do experience life as a battle. And it's a struggle. And other people become part of the struggle. The people and situations of our lives, even the people we think we love, can sometimes create obstacles, make things harder, create challenges. And the ego is the basis of the ego is a scarcity principle. There's not enough time, love, money, food, whatever we think we need. And the thing that the ego interprets as blocking our access to those things that limits us from getting what we think we want or need can be other people, situations, the economy, institutions in our society, the government, things like that. So when we all have this mentality, and then again, as I said earlier in the book, in this chapter, we're all basically driven by, actually in chapter 5 we said, the primary motivation for all our choices and decisions is we want to feel better. And the way I translate that into this discussion is we want to, everything we do is motivated by this desire to survive, take care of ourselves, because nothing feels better than surviving, and or what we consider the pursuit of happiness. We'll feel better, i.e. happy, if we get that thing that we think we want or need, or accomplish that thing that we want to accomplish. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of that, but the problem is it can cloud our judgment, and it can create a mindset which sees other people as the enemy. It's other people that are stopping me from getting the love that I want or need, or the money that I want or need, or the food that I want or need. We create a worldview that says life is hard. We have to struggle to get what we think we want or need, and other people are often the obstacle to us achieving our goals, to getting where we want to be. So this idea that, be kind, for everyone is fighting the same hard battle, I think that's a good way to begin to look at life. Even if it's, one of my favorites is driving on the highway. And you notice, I imagine that I can tell the kind of day that somebody had by the way they're driving home from work that night. If you're on the highway at 5 o'clock, you can get a sense, people who are weaving in and out of traffic. If there is traffic, this is totally out of left field, but where I live, there's an incline. It's about 1.5 miles incline. And what happens is the highway widens at that point. So it goes from like 4 lanes to like 6 lanes or 5 lanes. And that right lane is for the slow-moving vehicles, the trucks that are having a really hard time getting up that hill. And what I notice is that some people use that as a shortcut. you know, and they think they're pulling one over on, and I've done this myself, so it's not, I'm actually going to poke fun at myself, but it's like that scarcity mentality. All these cars are in my way, and I got to find the fastest way to get home. Otherwise, you know, whatever. I have this thing in my head that says, you know, they're in my way. It's their fault that I'm going slow, so I got to find a way around them. And I think I'm pulling one over on people. And there's often a cop that sits up there and waits for people to pull up in that lane, that right lane, passing traffic on the right side, and write some tickets. So I don't do that anymore. Not that I ever got a ticket, but what I'm saying is this shows the mentality. You know, look at the way people drive. Look at the way people do business in the world, not just in America. Look at the way people, you know, what we consider entertainment. You know, there's a lot of, you know, you go to a blockbuster movie, and I love the entertainment industry, and there's exceptionally talented people working in it. And a lot of the storylines are about the struggle when we have to overcome, and other people, you know, particularly the bad guys, we have to eliminate them. We have to fight our way to the top. You know, look at pro sports. You know, it's all about fighting and beating the other guy. That mentality makes it very difficult to look at other people with compassion, with understanding, and with ultimately forgiveness, in my opinion. Okay? So, and then the other thing I like here is from A Course in Miracles, all attacks are a call for love. You know, I've said this before. We talked a little bit about this the last couple of weeks, and it was in the reading tonight. You know, when people act crazy, it's not because they're bad people. It's often because they're afraid. It's often because they're stressed out. It's often because something traumatic has happened in their lives. So if we can begin to look at those people, including ourselves, because I still have moments where I want to attack other people because I feel so afraid. Remember, another quote that I love from A Course in Miracles, frightened people can be vicious. Well, what if everybody who's vicious is really frightened? It's my position, and this is just my opinion, and I'm one person, and I have to admit, you know, I lead a pretty sheltered life, and so I know it's very easy for me to say this, you know, but it's my opinion that in our normal states as human beings, it's not in our nature to want to harm other people. And I know not everybody agrees with that. Some people think that there are just bad people in the world who do just want to harm other people. And that may be true, but what I'm suggesting is maybe if we approach the situations more from maybe they're frightened people, maybe they're, you know, struggling to survive, to take care of themselves, take care of their family. You know, maybe they have trauma. I mean, I have yet to meet somebody who hasn't had some kind of trauma in their lives. So it doesn't mean we give people a pass on their bad behavior. It doesn't mean we don't take care of ourselves. It doesn't even mean that we don't use force if necessary, because sometimes it is necessary to use force to restrain somebody else, another person or another nation, from inflicting harm on other people. And if we can begin to change the equation and begin to look at it and say, okay, so, I mean, ultimately, you know, if I can relate to somebody else's craziness and say, I don't agree with what you're doing, but I think I can understand why you're doing it, that can begin to change everything, in my opinion and in my experience. It may not always work. It may not be appropriate for every situation. But for most of the situations that most of us encounter in life, in our interpersonal relationships with people in our family, people at work, things like that, I just will invite you, and I'll invite myself at the same time, to begin to look at those conflicts a little differently. And to begin to look at the other person perhaps as somebody who's really struggling, somebody who's really afraid, somebody who's really on unsteady ground for whatever reason. And again, you know, not to put ourselves in harm's way, not to give them a pass on their inappropriate behavior, but to begin to approach it from that place and then see what comes. So that's why I love this quote. So this is from Tomorrow's God, the book I mentioned earlier. I love this quote. And I've actually said this to somebody, and it stopped them in their tracks. So I know that this can work. And I said, and the quote is, "What hurts you so much that you feel you have to hurt me to heal it?" Most of us have no idea what we're doing when we harm somebody else, when we harm ourselves. You know, whether it's in our own family, whether it's in as I said, a work situation, a social situation, you know, we have no idea what we're doing. We're so caught up in the craziness of our lives that it's very easy to do things that harm ourselves and other people. So calling somebody's instead of immediately fighting back or retaliating or taking it personally, how could you do this to me? You know, the ego takes everything personally and then feels justified in attacking back. If we circumvent the ego and actually say something, I mean, it doesn't have to be verbatim, but something like, you know, what hurts you so much that you feel you have to hurt me to heal it? Why do you see me as such a threat? And let them talk. Let them express whatever it is that's driving their inappropriate behavior. That can totally diffuse an otherwise volatile situation, you know, can begin a healing of a relationship. And when we bring it, you know, and when people bring it to my attention, you know, I've had a situation where my 7-year-old nephew called me on, he didn't know what he was doing at the time, but he said something like, "Why are you being so mean to me?" And it was like, and I didn't even realize in that moment that I was acting inappropriately because I was so caught up in the fear or whatever that was going on in my head. So gently and appropriately calling to somebody else's attention that their behavior may actually be inappropriate, instead of taking it personally, feeling offended, and then feeling justified in fucking them up, you know, because of what they did to us, and then mistaking that for strength, mistaking that for victory or whatever, you know, mistaking retaliation and revenge for some kind of a solution. You know, try it. I offer that to anybody who it resonates with. Now, the other one that I came up with, which is based on our discussion from day one, is if we saw the world the way they see the world. So this is the person who's attacking us or who is offending us or whatever. If we saw the world the way they see the world, and if we saw ourselves the way they see themselves, then we'd probably be doing the exact same thing they're doing. And that makes us the same as them. Now, ultimately, this is the ego's worst nightmare. The ego does not want to be seen the same as anybody. The ego only wants to be seen better than other people, separate from other people, and justified in doing whatever we think we need to do to survive, to be happy, to get what we need from life, or what we want. There's nothing in that equation about having compassion for other people's insecurities, having compassion for other people's traumatic life experiences. And of course, you know, this is that old saying, you know, don't judge another person until you've walked a mile in their shoes. You know, when we stop and say, wow, how must they see the world? How must they see themselves to be treating me this way, to be acting this way? And maybe it's not even directed at me. I've seen this I've been in situations where one person is attacking another person. It has nothing to do with me. But looking in, I can see the ego at work, and I can see the viciousness of the ego, and you know, somebody who is really afraid, somebody who is really insecure, somebody who feels really threatened. Instead of seeing two messed up people who, and making fun of them or judging them, making them wrong for being unenlightened or whatever I can do to judge them as being less than, so I can feel more, you know, and then a week later, I'm one of those two people, you know. So, so if we saw the world the way they see the world, if we saw ourselves the way they see themselves, what would that mean? You know, could we begin to have some compassion and understanding for them, while at the same time making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, we're not putting ourselves in harm's way. And there may be people where they're too far gone, where it's totally inappropriate, you know, and so don't you know, not use common sense, don't put yourself in harm's way. You know, it's not our job to fix anybody, it's not our job to save anybody. All right, I'm not talking about any of that. And I'm suggesting there might be another way to deal with the people and situations that really challenge us in life. Because it's my opinion that the status quo is not working. Whatever we think we're doing and have been doing, you know, I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to get away with all of that, you know. All right. So here's more of the same. This is from page 251. Punishment, retaliation, and attack are decisions to withhold love and or inflict injury upon another. We think by doing these things we'll be protecting ourselves. So again, this is the whole reason I spent so much time the last few weeks talking about boundaries. We want to find a healthy, functional way to protect ourselves, to take care of ourselves, so we don't need retaliation. We don't need to attack. We don't need punishment. We don't need all of that to take care of ourselves. And what few people seem to realize is that we're actually creating more things to be afraid of by attacking others. Every time we retaliate, justified or not, and remember, we think we're justified, but they probably don't. And now they feel like they have been innocently attacked. They feel like they're being attacked for no reason. And now all of a sudden it escalates. So we retaliate, now they retaliate. And what all of this does, both in our minds and in reality, is create more potential enemies. And more enemies creates more fear, and the cycle continues. And you know what? It doesn't matter how many guns we have. It doesn't matter how big our guns are. It doesn't matter how many bombs we have. It doesn't matter how big our bombs are. You know, we are still susceptible to retaliation, attack, whatever. So, and we know that. And so this sense of insecurity, the sense of fear that drives our relations, you know, within our own neighborhoods or within the globe on a global basis, you know, it all comes out of this insecurity that's driven by the ego, this lack of compassion, this lack of caring about other people, feeling justified in doing whatever we need to do to survive, including harming other people. And so my position, and again, I know not everybody feels this way, and I will also acknowledge that it may not always be appropriate or play out exactly this way, but it's my feeling that forgiveness breaks that cycle. And honestly, in the long term, I think it's the only ultimate solution if we really want peace. Now, a lot of us say we want peace. We got to look at that and see how much we really mean that. Because until we're willing to do whatever it takes to have peace, whether it's in our own family or on the world stage, until we're willing to do whatever it takes to get there, we may not want it as much as we think we do. So again, you know, when we're confronted, when we feel that righteous indignation, how could you do this to me? When we take it personally, when we feel offended, and we're so certain that we're right and they're wrong, remember chapter 6, would you rather be right or happy? Whenever we're in that state of mind, here's a question to ask yourself. If you were the other person, would you accuse yourself of doing what you're now accusing them of doing? Would I accuse myself of doing this? So as I say here in the book, a better strategy might be to inquire of the other person why they acted the way they did. Instead of taking it personally, stop and say, like my nephew said to me, "Why are you being so mean to me?" A simple question like that can change everything. Not in an attacking way, not in an accusatory way, but as a genuine inquiry. A genuine inquiry made with an open mind and an open heart. That could lead to a breakthrough and heal the rift between you. Accusation and attack, on the other hand, will only widen that rift. And again, I see this a lot, like on social media. You know, I've shared with you guys, and next week you're going to hear the story about how the souvenirs came about. That came through people attacking me on Facebook for my photography, and I used to take that personally, and I used to want to attack them back, and I used to feel justified in attacking them back, and I stopped doing that, and instead I did kind of what we're talking about here. I reached out to them, I made a genuine inquiry why they were acting that way, what was bothering them, and all of that changed everything. And I have 2 real-world experiences. So we're going to talk more about that next week. You're going to hear that actual story. But the thing I was going to say was, you know, accusation and attack, you know, that instead of, and a lot of times if people just said to me, gee, that's a really great photo, it's almost too good to be true. How did you actually do that? And then I tell them. When people, instead of accusing me of photoshopping my images, fake, it's not real, the moon isn't really like that, the moon doesn't look like that, the moon doesn't do that. When people actually stop and say, wow, this is almost too good to be true, how did you do that? I tell them. I teach people. I love teaching other people, you know, how to be better at photography and other things in life. It's something that I really enjoy. But when somebody attacks me and accuses me, I'm not going to, you know, I mean, what do they expect back? And in that situation, they just want to be right about me being wrong. They're really not interested in whether or not it's an actual photo or how I did it, how I captured that image or whatever. So, so I'm suggesting from actual experience that there may be a better way. There may be another way, especially if we really do want peace, especially if we do, and I had, you know, when I changed my attitude about all of this, you know, I ended up with a 5-figure license deal and my photos on coffee mugs and refrigerator magnets and cool stuff like that. So I know from experience that when I change how I deal with somebody else attacking me, it changes everything. I have a whole different outcome in that situation. All right, so we're going to take our break now. If you're new here, and that was the assignment for tonight. If we saw the world the way they see the world, if we saw ourselves the way they see themselves, then we'd probably be doing the exact same thing they're doing, and that makes us the same as them. That last sentence, that last part is the kicker. That makes us the same as them. Again, the ego never wants to see us as the same as anybody else because the ego judges everybody else as less than and us as better than. And to say that we're the same completely undermines that for the ego. So do you agree or disagree, and why? We'll talk about that when we come back. Again, if you're new here, I'm going to play the song again. This song is 5 minutes. I can't actually play the song on YouTube if you're watching the replay. But the song is Love My Life by Robbie Williams. The lyrics will be on screen. They're very life-affirming, positive affirmations. So we'll be back in 5 minutes. So our assignment for tonight, if we saw the world the way they see the world, and if we saw ourselves the way they see themselves, then we'd probably be doing the exact same thing they're doing, and that makes us the same as them. Agree or disagree, and why? All right, so who wants to chime in on the assignment? And again, none of this is black and white. None of this is right and wrong. I think there is a strong argument for case by case. And I'm not going to deny that people don't do evil things in the world. There's definitely people do evil things. The ultimate question, I think, for me is, does that make them evil? And if they're evil, am I then justified in doing whatever I need to do to them to justify whatever I need to justify? So this is a tough topic, and I'm not pretending I have all the answers, but go ahead, Dee Dee.
Thanks, Peter. Okay. So I agree, and I totally believe in what you're saying. And what I've noticed for myself is that when I'm tired, stressed, focused on my own fear, kind of like there's not enough, or, I'm scrambling in any way, my tolerance for other people goes really low. And in my lifetime, there have been plenty of times when I've been particularly, I'll just say, where the cup isn't full, and I don't have the bandwidth to just be present for another person's challenges. And then the flip side of that is, for a great portion of my life, I have had a full cup. I have had enough resources, enough recovery, if you will, enough spiritual, enough filled spiritually to just be a loving witness, no matter what somebody else was doing. So it's a real self-check on just how I'm gonna cry, just how challenged, I've been for the last 12, 24 months, maybe 36 months. And not pandemic, not related. It's not about the pandemic for me. It's just the other stuff. So I'm in gratitude for knowing that there's a toolbox, there's resources. I have support from you, which I appreciate. I love these workshops, and I also have had a little space of having some, space in my own situation where I can actually be calm enough to recognize that, oh yeah, I've been too tired to this. I haven't been resourceful, and I'm not the person that I am when I'm full up, when my cup is full. And how do I prevent myself from letting myself get to that too stressed out place where nothing, where my tolerance for others gets so low that it creates a conflict. I don't know the answer, and I certainly don't know beyond my own hula hoop for the world. I don't have any answers. Pass.
All right. Thanks, Dee Dee. I get it. I understand. That's, we're talking about self-care. Until I take care of myself, until I'm, that's part of my regiment now. I mean, I always got to put myself first. If I don't put myself first, I'm putting myself last, and myself and other people are going to suffer for that. So somehow, some way, I got to make the time to take care of myself, get enough sleep, enough rest, exercise, food, whatever it is that I need. And then, even more important than the physical stuff is the mental stuff. Start every day with meditation, with prayer, and I don't, if I have work or something like that. I mean, this came up this week. Somebody wants me to do some photography work, and I let them know that I don't start before 10:30. I'm not going to be there at 7 in the morning because I got to take care of myself. I don't tell them why. I just say I'm not available before 10:30 a.m. And actually, I would normally say I often say before noon. because I need my morning, I'm getting a little older or whatever, but, I need my morning time. Family stuff, like I tell my family, don't count on me for anything before noon. And it's not because I'm lazy, it's because it takes work. This takes work, I don't just wake up in the morning and feel this way. So self-care, that's all important. And so that's why it's so important to learn how to put ourselves first. Many people, I'm not a parent, but I see this with parents, get so, exhausted and stressed out trying to manage everybody else's life. And then it's very easy to react, and to react badly, and to react in a way that has consequences for the family, for years. So self-care, and I get it, people got to work, got to earn a living, there's a lot going on. That's part of my responsibility, taking care of myself, making sure I have enough time to take care of myself in the morning and all of that. So, and then, you know what? Some people, I'm not saying, as I said earlier, it's not our job to make things okay for anybody but ourselves. It's not our job to save anybody. It's not our job to fix anybody. It's not our job to make people feel comfortable or whatever, unless we choose to, and unless that's part of a negotiation, and unless that's part of our setting healthy boundaries and all of that. So don't ever put anybody else. Look, this sounds like a horrible thing to say, but my thing now is, I don't put other people first until I've taken care of myself, because I can't really be of service to them if I haven't taken care of myself. It's the whole oxygen mask thing, on the airplane. It's like, put your oxygen mask on first, because you're going to be worthless to the people sitting next to you if you're gasping for air. So, and that's not to make anybody wrong for not taking care of themselves. I'm just saying, that's been part of my process, part of my journey. Say anything else, Dee Dee? Good? Okay. Who else? Cynthia.
Thank you. And thank you, Dee Dee, and thank you, Peter. This really resonates with me, and it makes me think of a time when I was not sleeping except for 4 hours a night. I can assure you that is not enough for this human. And I would go out. I was an assistant principal in charge of discipline in a very large school. And there would be days when I had gotten more sleep, when I had had breakfast and it didn't contain sugar or grain in my body doesn't react well to either of those. And I felt better. And so I would walk around like a little lighter in step, and I would be doing exactly the same things as other days in exactly the same places as other days. I had particular areas that I was to supervise, and I would notice things differently. So on the good days, I would notice that there was a young woman who was pregnant, and I had been seeing her but hadn't noticed. And that was something that I needed to deal with. I was also in charge of the nurse's office, so I needed to get her hooked up with a nurse and find out, did her parents know? And what medical care did she need? And how soon was this baby due? Was the nurse prepared to bring this baby into the world? These kinds of things were real life things. But on that particular day, because I was a little more present in my body, aware, compassionate, I noticed. And I had probably seen her almost every day, but hadn't noticed. On the flip side of it was the day that I wasn't fed appropriately. I had not fed myself appropriately. I had not slept, and I was irritated with the drive in from the other side of hill. So I had come across the hill into the valley, and it had been tortuous, and I maybe had been pushing the time. And so I was getting to the edge of late for me, et cetera, et cetera. And so those days when I was walking around, I was looking at people very differently. And I would find myself with, 2 or 3 kids that I was corralling and walking them to the office to take care of some major infraction that I thought they had done, which they probably did every day. And on the good days, I didn't. I just took it with a light heart and got them into the class where they were supposed to be instead of where they were. And on those bad days, I was ready to punish, ready to inflict harm on them because I was having the bad day. And sometimes I would realize it when I got to the office and I thought, I'm making a lot of work for myself here. What am I doing? And I'd ask them, what were you doing? And what could you do differently a different day? And sometimes I would realize in time to just send them to class with a note that said, let them in. So those are examples. And one other thing I thought of when you were sharing was sometimes in my heart, and occasionally out loud, but mostly in my heart, I'll say something to myself like, well, how does me taking care of me harm you? Because sometimes people are offended by things I'm doing to take care of myself, like, not being available until a particular time or having commitments that are important to me. So, I want to do those things. I don't want to schedule myself for something else during those times. So how does my taking care of me harm you? And, usually if I do say it out loud, they're like, well, no, it doesn't harm me. And then we can go on with scheduling differently or doing something differently. So, Peter, thank you so much. And thank you to the other participants as well. I really appreciate this.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Cynthia. Thank you. That's a beautiful share. And so a couple of things that come up for me. Time boundaries are one of the ways that we talked about last couple of weeks. Time boundaries are a way we take care of ourselves. And so that's a real life example how I use time boundaries in my life. But what I was going to say was, recognizing that when I'm having a bad day because I haven't taken care of myself, I can do harmful things to other people. What I'm suggesting is, well, when somebody does something harmful to me, maybe, just a little bit of room there to say, wow, maybe it's not about me. Maybe they're just having a bad day. It's got nothing to do with me. This is not taking things personally, not looking to make other people wrong so I can feel right, so I could feel better than, so I could feel superior. And, but I really have to check myself because there's a lot of days still in my life when I don't want to, I want to feel better than other people. I want to feel superior. I want to make somebody else wrong. Now, more and more I catch that. More and more, I'm more aware in the moment, and I say, is that really what I want to do? Would you rather be right or happy? Because I'm usually not very happy when I make somebody else wrong. And, beginning to look at other people's insane behavior with compassion and understanding and saying, wow, if I saw the world the way they see the world, and if I saw myself the way they see themselves, then I would probably be doing the exact same thing. And if I'm really honest about it, kind of what you were just sharing, Cynthia, I can see when I've bossed people around at work or whatever, or because I was having a bad day. So that's what I'm suggesting here. When other people do things that even if they're harmful, even if they appear to be intentional, willful acts, we're not in our right mind. We're crazy. And we act crazy without even knowing that we're acting crazy. Now again, for the millionth time, this doesn't mean we give other people a pass on their inappropriate behavior. Other people and myself, I'm accountable for my bad behavior. but maybe there's another way to approach those situations. And maybe there's another way to, and I love, again, what you say, how is me taking care of myself harming you? Now, it's really interesting you use the word harm. In the next week or two, we're going to be talking about the difference between hurt and harm, because they are different. But, it's just calling it to somebody's attention, bringing people's awareness up, because we get so focused on what we're doing. We're so stressed out, and I got to do my job, and you're stopping me from doing what I need to do, and now my boss is going to yell at me, or I'm going to be late for work because you idiots don't know how to drive, whatever it is. And that becomes our justification for our own inappropriate behavior. The ego always feels justified. So the example in the audiobook tonight was, anybody who's got kids knows this, but, I have 8 nieces and nephews, and, often when the kids are fighting or whatever, and the adult intervenes, one of them or both of them is going to say, well, they did it to me first. They started it. Which is what they're really saying is, I'm justified in doing what I'm doing because of what they did. And most of us have not progressed far beyond that 6-year-old mentality. We feel justified in hurting somebody else because we think they've hurt us. It's not to say that other people don't harm us, and we can still approach it in a different way. All right, great. Thanks, Cynthia. You want to say anything else?
Yes, thank you. Always.
Okay, thank you. Barb, did you want to jump in?
Yes, I'm jumping in. Hi. All of it sounded good. It was very interesting to listen to. And I think you know that I had a situation, and it really stuck with me. But I'd have to say the 2 weeks that it was around, I did constantly talk to myself and say, I've got to take care of myself. I've got to do something about this. I just didn't know what it was. All the words, letting it go, this, that, but it wasn't going away. I was hurt. I think I was just hurt. I didn't go into the angry thing. I think I figured it out that I was hurt, but finally, I think it was Saturday. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. I went and talked to somebody, and they mentioned the word forgiveness. And, so many times we use that word, and I still don't get it. Forgiveness can have a lot of different meanings, but just hearing somebody else say it again, and all I said to myself is, I guess I haven't forgiven them. And that's why I'm holding on to it. And so I can't say I got a rush of nothing happened. That was the light bulb that went on. It's just hearing somebody else say it and then me going, oh, I guess I really haven't forgiven them. And once that happened, I felt better. So there wasn't a physical forgiveness. There wasn't a mental forgiveness. It just was. And it's a big word. It's a big word, and it has a lot of meanings.
Well, that's why it's the longest chapter in the book. It's 60 pages.
Okay. And I'm probably switching around because what you're talking about is also good. And we're all talking in the past because we feel like we're not doing it now. But remembering that when somebody did something to us, we always reacted, and we reacted badly too. And how many times later on did we say, well, it made us as bad as they are? And once you're bigger than that, you don't go there. You don't go there. You don't want to be like them. You want to be much, I almost said you want to be better than them, but you do. So you mentioned that now. You said you want to be.
How about helping them be better than who they are?
Okay, that's the next step. Ha ha.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Now, again, it's not our job to fix people. It's not our job to save people. It's not our job to, especially other adults. All right, I'm not talking about that. And this is because when we forgive other people, we're really forgiving ourselves. And so if I can have compassion and can even, in the face of somebody attacking me, if I can say, I have a choice here. And here's the thing, the ego loves grievances. You know, we collect grievances. We put them in our pockets and we walk around with them and we feel justified that we're better than everybody else because of what they all did to us. So we collect these grievances, but there's a payoff. See, this is the whole thing about the ego. There's a payoff to seeing ourselves as victims of somebody else's unloving behavior or inappropriate behavior. And that one of those payoffs is we get to see ourselves as better than them. But that's why I'm saying here, if we saw the world the way they see the world, and if we saw ourselves the way they see themselves, then we'd probably be doing the exact same thing as them. And that makes us the same as them. It doesn't make us better. So
what you're saying is we do want to be better or bigger.
Well, the ego wants to be better. I'm suggesting we can be bigger for both of us. We can actually help the people who are attacking us.
Okay.
Not that we have to. It's not our job to fix them. You know, and if they're really acting inappropriately, it's our job to just get out of the way. Don't put ourselves in harm's way. None of that. And, in my opinion, and based on my experience, you know, it takes a much bigger heart, a much bigger love, more strength, more courage to reach out to somebody who's attacking us from a place of love and compassion than to attack them back. We put so much emphasis on violence and judgment and making others wrong and being better than others, and we think that's strength. And I'm saying that's weakness. Making somebody else wrong for being human, making somebody else wrong for being imperfect, making somebody else wrong for not being who we think they're supposed to be, without recognizing that we'd probably be acting exactly the way they're acting right now if we were in their situation. You know, that's a recipe for conflict for the rest of our lives. And the stakes keep getting higher, guys. You know, weapon proliferation, you know, cyber attacks. I mean, there's so many different ways now, you know, that we can hurt each other. We got to find another way. You know, biological warfare. I mean, you know, the stakes are getting higher and higher and higher. It can't continue to be, you know, justified in attacking other people for what we think they've done to us, in my opinion. And again, really easy for me to say. I'm sitting in my living room in New Jersey. You know, my life's pretty good, so I get it. Very easy for me to say all this. And it may, in fact, not be the entire answer, but something's got to give.
I agree. You know, I do. That's the bigger picture. And then we're working on ourselves. So, and that's something also. Like you said, you work on yourself every morning. So do I. I can't say that I used to do that. You know, I've been doing that for the last year, year and a half. Every morning, I need to work on myself in order to go out there into the big bad world. And it's not a big bad world. I just need to work on myself, and it really helps. So that's taking care of yourself, and that's something I didn't do in the past and something I'm doing now. So that's a good thing.
So Course in Miracles says, you are the light of the world.
Yes. Yes.
Course in Miracles says, you're the salvation of the world. If not you, then who?
Right, exactly. But I do believe that. I'm going through that. Yeah, that spiritualness. I wish, and just think about it. If everybody had that, the world would be different. Yes.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
I know, and I get it.
You know,
and it's one person.
Yeah, and so we can all do our part, you know, and again, it's, you know, it's not by telling other people unless they come. If people come and ask, you know, like you guys with me, then we tell them. But a better way is to live it, is to be it. You know, be that light, be that forgiveness, be that love, that loving compassion. But we got to start with ourselves. You know, if I can't forgive myself for my mistakes, it's going to be very hard for me to truly forgive somebody else for theirs. So we don't have to look very far to start
Right.
practicing
And my
forgiveness.
forgiveness was, yeah. And my forgiveness, I think, was not so much of, forgiving myself for making the mistake. It was the hurt. So whatever hurt, is a tough thing. And I was really hurt. So I just had to forgive myself for being hurt. I don't know. I don't know how else to put it, but I had to get to the core of what was bothering, it wasn't the mistake. I was really hurt. So I forget, you say you forgive yourself, you forgive them, whatever happened. I heard it out loud again. I heard somebody else say it to me, and it made a difference. And that person, I obviously made a difference for me. So that was good. But I reached out to them. That's why, because I needed something. I was going crazy. So there are people, it's wonderful. And hopefully I can help somebody in return like that too.
I'm sure you can. I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have.
Yes. Okay, all of the above. Yes. It's a very simple thing. All you have to do is listen.
Now, I forgive myself for letting other people hurt me.
Okay, I guess.
Good affirmation.
Okay.
And what we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks, the difference between hurt and harm. It's my take on it is that hurt is always a function of how we see ourselves. It's a subjective thing based on who we think we are. And because nobody is, and I'm just speaking for myself, all right? I don't know if this is true for anybody else, but nobody has the power to hurt me unless I give them that power. And the way I give them that power is by thinking that they're right about me being wrong. See, my secret fear is that maybe what they're saying about me is true. But that's really, I'm reacting to my own feelings about myself. I'm not really reacting to what they're saying or doing. I'm just blaming them for how I feel about myself.
Yeah. Excuse me.
So that's why I make the difference. I do it, and we're going to talk all about this probably next week or 2 weeks. There's a distinction between hurt and harm. And I define harm as a much more objective kind of thing. Hurt is very subjective. And I believe it's based on how we see ourselves. And when I strengthen my own self-image, when I strengthen my sense of value and worth, when I love myself, it's very hard for other people to hurt me.
So really, I've got to work on those things. Exactly what you just said. You just gave me 3 things to work on. Okay.
Yeah, and don't work on them. Play on them. Have fun with it.
Okay. Yeah, not work. Okay.
Yeah, make it fun. Put some Post-it notes on your bathroom mirror, or and just have fun with it. Put smiley faces on them and say, "I love myself. Other people don't have the power to hurt me." Whatever.
Okay. Okay, I'll do it.
Ultimately, that's part of us taking care of ourselves. It's us taking responsibility for our experience. Look, it's so easy to blame other people when they're being assholes. It's much more difficult to say, number one, how did I attract this person into my life? What is it about me? Remember, we started off the workshop. You weren't here, Barb, but if you watch the replay, I started off with the affirmation of the day was a quote from Abraham Hicks, Law of Attraction. Law of Attraction says we attract into our lives that which resonates with our vibrational state. And I said our vibrational state is our emotional state. So the people that we attract, when we attract assholes into our lives, there's something about us that's inviting those people in. Or whatever. Now, not to blame ourselves. This is not about, gee, okay, so this person's being a jerk, it must be my fault. No, not what I'm saying. And it's the law of attraction is that however we're vibrating, whatever we're resonating with comes into our lives. Now, you can either look at it as a curse or a blessing. And A Course in Miracles and other spiritual texts suggest that when the assholes show up, what is it about me that needs healing? And or how can I be of service to this person? How can I help them? Course in Miracles says all attacks are a call for love. Imagine if everybody who attacks us is really calling out for our help, calling out for love. They feel so bad. They feel so desperate. They feel so angry. They feel so afraid that they're attacking us because it's the only way they know how to take care of themselves in that situation. That person needs our help. They don't need our wrath. They don't need our condemnation. They don't need our judgment. They need help. So, again, not everybody feels this way about, when other people attack us, and there are situations, totally get it, where, it's not, we're not going to stop and have a nice conversation with that person. We need to do whatever we need to do to remove them or ourselves from that situation. I'm not denying that. And, those seem to be more the exception than the rule. And so there are opportunities for us to look at this as, how can I take care of myself, and then how can I help this person if they want my help? And that's why one of the quotes, a couple of the from the slides from earlier tonight, saying to somebody, what hurts you so much that you feel you have to hurt me to heal it? Just bringing that to bringing that to the other person's attention, to their awareness, that can change everything. As opposed to, you're a effing a-hole and I'm going to kick your ass, and and I'm justified in blowing you up or whatever I need to do. And so, we begin to see things differently. Course in Miracles, one of the definitions of a miracle is a shift in perception. It's the same situation, it's the same people, but somehow we see it differently. We see it through the eyes of love rather than through the eyes of the ego. And that shift in perception changes everything. And that's what opens the door to peace. That's what opens the door to reconciliation. That's what opens the door to healing. All right, Barb, you want to say anything else?
No, good. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm going
Go
to
ahead,
have to
Didi.
go, but I want to say thank you for the third affirmation meditation. They're all fabulous and they keep getting better. So thank you.
Awesome. All right, you're welcome. Yeah, I did complete the third affirmation meditation. It's available along with the other two. All right, so I'm going to play the song one last time, 3.5 minutes. We'll come back for our final goodbyes. Okay, so that's it for this week, guys. Again, this is like the master's class and all this. This is not easy stuff, so go easy on yourself. If you're having trouble applying this in your own life, that kind of thing, go easy on yourselves. Self-forgiveness first. And don't put yourself in harm's way. Don't do that. Take care of yourself first. And part of learning how to speak up for ourselves goes a long way in speak up for ourselves in a healthy, non-confrontational way goes a long way in paving the way for reconciliation and all of that. So look at these as opportunities to practice what we're talking about. These are all learning opportunities, practice opportunities, that kind of thing. All right, so anybody want to say anything before we go? Everybody good?
Thank you.
Yep, I'm good. Thank you. Good
All right,
night.
great. Thank
See you next week.
All right, great. Thank you, guys. So remember, be bigger than you think you are today and every day. And next week, I want to hear about your victories and celebrations. All right? Take care, guys.